Sam and I had become reluctant roommates. We were both university students, thrust together by a housing shortage, each harboring our own peculiar habits and secrets. Sam was a quiet, enigmatic figure, his nights filled with mysterious outings that left me puzzled and admittedly a bit unnerved. Our apartment was a dimly lit, cramped space, cluttered with the debris of college life. Sam's room, always locked, emanated odd, metallic smells at odd hours of the night. My curiosity, initially piqued, evolved into a gnawing suspicion as weeks turned into months. One evening, as a thunderstorm raged outside, the electricity in our apartment flickered and died, plunging the space into darkness. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to thicken with the storm's fury. With only the illumination of my phone's flashlight, I ventured into the living room, only to find Sam's door ajar, an unprecedented occurrence. Heart pounding, I pushed the door open to reveal a scene that was at once both mundane and bizarre. The room was sparsely furnished, with a desk, a bed, and bookshelves laden with thick volumes on anatomy and exotic cookbooks. But it was the large industrial freezer humming quietly in the corner that drew my horrified fascination. Sam's voice, unexpectedly close, shattered the silence. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his tone devoid of emotion. I turned to find him standing in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the lightning outside. His expression was unreadable, a mask that gave nothing away. "Sam, what's going on? What's with the freezer?" I stammered, trying to mask my fear with indignation. He paused, considering his words carefully. "I have unique dietary requirements," he began, hesitantly. "Things I cannot find at a regular grocery store." The air between us was charged with an unsaid implication. My mind raced, piecing together the late-night disappearances, the strange smells, the freezer. But before I could confront him further, a loud knock at our front door interrupted us. We both froze, the moment suspended. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Sam looked at me, a silent understanding passing between us. With a nod, he gestured for me to follow him to the door. As we approached, the knocking grew louder, more desperate. Sam reached for the doorknob, hesitated, and then swung the door open. On our doorstep, soaked from the rain and visibly shaken, stood a police officer. "We've had reports of unusual activity in this area," he began, eyeing us both. "Mind if I come in and take a look around?" The question hung in the air, charged with implication. Sam and I exchanged a glance, 1,000 words passing in silence. This was the moment of truth, the point of no return. What lay ahead was uncertain, the story unfinished, our fates intertwined with the decisions we were about to make. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within as Sam and I hesitated, caught in the glare of the officer's flashlight. Sam's eyes flickered to me, a silent plea for complicity. With a nod that felt more like a betrayal of my own morals, I stepped aside, allowing the officer to enter our dimly lit refuge from the storm. The officer's boots echoed on the wooden floor as he made his way through our apartment, his flashlight sweeping over the clutter of our lives. I could feel Sam's tension, a palpable force that seemed to thicken the air around us. My heart raced, each beat a loud echo in the quiet storm. When the beam of the officer's flashlight fell upon the slightly ajar door to Sam's room, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold rain outside. "What's in there?" the officer asked, his voice betraying a hint of suspicion. Before I could intervene, Sam answered, his voice steady but tinged with an edge of defiance. "My room," he said simply. The officer nodded, moving toward the door with a purpose that sent a wave of panic through me. As the officer pushed the door wider, the room was exposed, the industrial freezer coming into view. I held my breath, waiting for the officer's reaction. He paused, eyeing the freezer before turning to Sam. "Mind if I take a look inside?" Sam's hesitation was a tangible thing, a brief moment that felt like an eternity. Finally, he nodded, a resigned tilt of his head that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. The officer approached the freezer, his hand reaching for the handle. The air felt heavy, charged with a mix of fear and anticipation. As the lid opened, the light from the officer's flashlight illuminated the contents, a shocking array of exotic meats, clearly labeled and meticulously organized, but undeniably unusual. Sam's voice broke the silence, his explanation pouring out in a rush. "I have rare dietary restrictions," he said, his tone a mix of defiance and plea. "Everything here is legal, just unconventional." The officer's scrutiny was intense, his examination thorough. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, he finally closed the freezer lid. Turning to us, his expression was unreadable. "I'll need to verify this," he said, his tone professional but not unkind. The tension broke like a storm clearing. Sam nodded, relief mingling with a trace of defiance in his posture. The officer took down our information, his demeanor suggesting a routine procedure rather than an accusation. As the officer left, the sound of the storm seemed to fill the space he vacated, a reminder of the night's revelations. Sam and I stood in the aftermath, the distance between us filled with unanswered questions and unvoiced thoughts. The night had peeled back a layer of our coexistence, revealing truths we both might have preferred to remain hidden. Yet as the storm raged on outside, a fragile understanding began to form between us, a silent agreement to navigate the uncertain waters ahead together. Our story was far from over. It had merely turned a new, unexpected corner, leading us into uncharted territory. The path forward was unclear, fraught with challenges and revelations yet to come. But for now, we stood together in the eye of the storm, bracing for whatever the morning light would bring. The tension in the air was palpable as the officer's gaze swept from Sam to me, an unspoken challenge in his eyes. Sam, ever the enigma, stepped aside with a gesture that was both inviting and resigned. "Of course, officer. We have nothing to hide," he said, his voice steady, betraying no hint of the anxiety I felt coursing through my veins. As the officer stepped into our dimly lit living room, his flashlight pierced the darkness, casting long shadows on the walls. He paused at the sight of Sam's partially open door, his interest clearly piqued by the unusual setup within. "What's in the room?" he asked, his tone taking on an edge of suspicion. Sam answered with practiced calm. "Just my study and personal items, officer. I'm a bit of a private person," he added, attempting a weak smile. The officer, however, was not deterred. He moved towards the room, his steps measured, flashlight leading the way. Sam and I exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between us. I could see the calculation in Sam's eyes, weighing our options, planning our next move. But it was what happened next that neither of us could have anticipated. The officer, upon entering Sam's room, stumbled, his flashlight dropping to the floor with a clatter. In the dim light, we saw him staring at something on the floor, his expression one of shock and confusion. Following his gaze, we saw what had caught his attention, a collection of intricate sculptures and carvings, arranged meticulously on the floor. The pieces were grotesque yet fascinating, depicting various creatures and figures, all made from a strange, dark material. I don't understand," the officer stammered, turning to face us, his suspicion momentarily forgotten. "What is all this?" Sam stepped forward, the hint of a smile playing on his lips. "My art," he said simply. "I'm a sculptor. These are my creations." The officer, caught off guard, looked from the sculptures back to us. "And the freezer?" he asked, his tone now more curious than accusatory. Sam laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to dispel some of the tension in the room. "Special materials for my art," he explained. "You'd be surprised how difficult it is to find good quality supplies." The officer, though clearly still puzzled, seemed to relax. "Well, I suppose it's all a bit unconventional, but there's no law against being an artist," he said, shaking his head as if to clear it of the bizarre situation. "Sorry to have bothered you this late. Just doing my rounds following some reports. Keep the noise down, all right?" As he left, Sam closed the door behind him, turning to me with an unreadable expression. The silence that fell between us was heavy with unasked questions and unsaid answers. The night's events had taken a surreal turn, leaving me to wonder about the true nature of my mysterious roommate. "Sam," I began, my voice uncertain, "is there something else you're not telling me?" He looked at me then, a depth of emotion in his gaze that I hadn't seen before. "Let's just say," he paused, choosing his words with care, "not everything is as it seems, but for now, we're safe, and that's all that matters." As I lay in bed later that night, the sound of the rain against my window a constant reminder of the evening's surreal events, I couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning. Sam's secrets, the sculptures, the officer's visit, they were all pieces of a larger puzzle, one that was far from complete, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the twists and turns of our story were only just starting to unfold. Thank you for listening to my channel.